Fir- Welcome, everybody. First and foremost, thank you all for giving up both an hour of your time for the training session and your Saturday afternoon this weekend. We know that without you, there would be no tournament. And we know that the students appreciate it as well. So I'm sure that they are sending you their gratitude as well. So we started out before everybody might have been here to ask, is everybody signed up on Tabroom? If for some reason you are not, you need to either speak to Frank at the end of the session or speak to your coach to make sure that they can get you not only signed up for Tabroom, which you're going to need to judge with, but also that your account is attached to your school. Also, I wanted to take a moment to congratulate Kate. The last time she was here, she was a single lady. And she just got married. So congratulations, Kate.
Mm.
Um, and now on to congressional debate. It usually takes an hour or two per session. There is a morning session, a late morning session, then after lunch, there is a final. The final is called the super session. You may be asked to judge in one, two, or all three. But if a student from your school makes it into super session, you may not need to judge that round because we try to keep things fair. If you notice that you are in a room with someone from your child's school, it could just be that we've run out of judges. And so we've tried to make it even so that every kid who's in that super session at the end will equally have, somebody who conceivably is thought of to be in their corner. So it all balances out. I will, though, start by saying not all the time is your student, if they're your actual child, not sometimes they don't go by your last name. If there's a case where your child has a different last name from you, it's a good idea to let the tab room know so that we don't have you judging your own child. It's okay if it's somebody from your school, but sometimes it's a little hard to be objective when it is your own child that you're judging. So if the case is that you go by a different name than your child, to please let the tab room know that in advance of the start of the round. That way you are not assigned to the same room that your child is in. There should be two judges in a room in the preliminary session. The final round, I believe, is 5. And do not start the round unless every judge is in the room. You can actually start the round even if you're missing a student, but you cannot start a round if you're missing a judge. Every judge has to hear every speaker. But let's say somebody is running late. The subway is late, the Metro North is late, somebody got stuck in traffic. They can literally walk into the room at any point during the round and still have a chance to speak and respond to speakers by asking questions. So they don't necessarily need to be there at the very start of the round. However, if you are missing a speaker, you'll notice that when you get an email that has the information for the day, there will be a phone number that is to be used to text, not to phone, to let the tab room know I'm missing a child. Or if, let's say, the round is supposed to start at 10 a.m. and it's 10:15 and your second judge is still not there, definitely let the tab room know I'm missing a judge. And we have people who will be on call that can just run right upstairs and the round can begin. But you have to make sure that your judges are all there. In Congress, the students will then go to choose a docket. The docket means what bills are they going to discuss and in which order are they going to discuss them. They've usually decided this in advance. So that part of the session will probably go pretty quickly. Although in some instances, if there's some contention over which speeches, which legislation should be done, there may actually be a debate before the debate about what the docket is. The next thing is, actually before that, is the choosing of the PO. A PO is the presiding officer. The presiding officer is the person who sits at the front of the room, who in a very objective way, at random at first, chooses who's going to speak in what order. They know the rules, they know parliamentary procedure, they know how much time people are supposed to speak for. If somebody in the room says, I think there's been a breach of the rules, they are the ones who have to decide whether or not that is the case and what to do about that. They are being judged, guys, as speakers. So if your room moves very fluidly, there aren't a lot of stops and starts. They know the rules back and forward. They're very good at keeping time, gaveling people down, being objective and random about how they choose their speakers. Please consider them when you're doing your final ranking, because obviously by the time we get to super session, somebody's going to have to be a PO. And if you have not ranked at least one PO during the two preliminary rounds, you're going to end up with a presiding officer in super session who's not very familiar with what needs to go on. So I do suggest that if they are pretty good at keeping the session in order, even though they're not giving a speech themselves or asking a question themselves, that you do consider giving them a ranking. And at the end of the round, you're probably going to have to rank, I think it's usually the top 8. So put them somewhere in that top 8. If you think that they did a good job, if they did not do a good job, don't just stick them in because I said, oh, we're going to need a PO. There'll be somebody in one of the other rooms who probably will advance, but consider it.
Frank, if I could just hop in. Sorry. If a presiding officer is not ranked, if they don't get that 1 to 8, that's usually a sign to them, to their coach, that something went kind of really wrong, that they've really dropped the ball, that they are not ready to be a PO, something like that. Obviously, we give a little grace to our novices who might very much be doing it for the first time, and we give them a little bit of grace for that. But if it's someone who is getting, if the room is challenging them, being like, you made a mistake on this, or you did this wrong, or God forbid they start the round without one of the judges, which is the only time I've never ranked a PO is when that happened. But if they have managed to do the job, they should be considered in your rankings.
Good. All right. Well, the PO is then going to ask, once the docket has been chosen, if there is an author of the piece of legislation, the first piece of legislation, and usually there's 2 pieces of legislation that will be discussed per round. So they're going to ask, is there an author present? Just for your own knowledge, that means the person who actually wrote the bill. Obviously, if there are 10 rooms, only one of the rooms is going to have the author. So the odds are your room is going to be one that doesn't have the author. And so the PO will then say, if no author is present, is there a sponsor for the bill? In other words, somebody who is in favor of the bill and knows it pretty well. Generally speaking, and this is very general, guys, the sponsor may be somebody from the same school as the person who wrote the legislation, because a lot of the time, schools, when they're practicing for the event, they'll hear the bills or they'll practice with the bills that they have already written. So it might be somebody from the same school, or it just might be somebody who is very familiar with the legislation. If there's no sponsor for the bill, the PO will then say, is there a first affirmative? The first person who is in favor of this bill. And guys, sometimes, especially if you're dealing with novices, sometimes you won't have an author, you won't have a sponsor, and then the young kids who've never done this very much may be petrified to be the first person to speak. They don't want to go first. One of the reasons might be that the person who does the first affirmative has more questions asked of them. And they may say to themselves, I'm not really that strong at extemporaneous speaking, thinking on my feet with questions that are thrown at me. So they may be scared about that. It's happened in the past, guys. I've been a judge in a room where they literally could not start the debate because there wasn't an author, there wasn't a sponsor, and everyone was terrified. At that point, somebody will probably say, may we take a 3-minute recess? And they'll go into recess where maybe someone from their team will go up to them and, pat them on the shoulder and say, it's going to be okay. Somebody's got to go first. This is normal, friends. Do not hold it against them if they're scared of going first. You know what? Especially if it's the first round of the day and they're brand new to speech, give them credit for finally deciding to be the first one to speak. It's not something to be ashamed of, to have been scared to get the ball rolling. But the bottom line is, until that first speech gets spoken, there is no debate. So someone has to speak first. Now, once they start, you will find the speaker on the ballot in Tabroom. And you're going to click on their name. And if they're the first speaker, you're going to put, I think it says pro or affirmative negative. And you have to let us know which that speech was. Then you're going to take some notes, guys. You need to be able to listen, consider, and write. Maybe you want to take notes on the side in a notepad. Maybe you don't want to type it into the box just yet. But you want to be able to keep track of what they said, what they did well, what maybe they need to work on. And it is essential that you give them critical feedback. To give you some general feedback that I use almost all the time, if you want to give them something that's positive, you can say, you spoke with a loud, clear voice. You were well-paced. You used a lot of evidence. Your speech was very well organized. You took in the entire chamber and communicated clearly to everyone. Examples of negative critical responses. You spoke too quickly. Consider slowing down your pace so that every word is heard. Your volume could be improved if you added a little bit more dynamic to it. You used a lot of good evidence, but then you didn't analyze it. And by analysis, I mean, this is important because This shows that. This is the reason we should support the bill, because it does this. Consider adding analysis. Sometimes people stop and start, or if they're reading either from a piece of paper or from a computer, sometimes they lose their place, and you might want to give them the feedback. You might consider familiarizing yourself with your speech a little bit more so that you don't lose your place, right? These are just general ideas of things that you can write if you get stuck. And that last thing that I mentioned, whether they're reading from a page or reading from a phone or reading from an iPad or a tablet, friends, there is no rule about what they are allowed to read from. Do not say to the person who had a beautifully typewritten piece of paper, "Oh, that was so much better than that person who was fumbling with their tablet." You're not supposed to rank one over the other. It's what they feel comfortable with. Guys, we of a certain generation might feel more comfortable holding a piece of paper, and those of the generation of iPhones and tablets might feel more comfortable using that. So you're not supposed to, judge one over the other. And when it comes to other kinds of judgments, guys, I think it's an important thing for me to point out that in the past, we have unfortunately gotten critiques that have said things like, "Why are you coming in a pair of ripped jeans? Why aren't you in a suit when everybody else is?" So I'm going to remind you, friends, there is no dress code. Yes, it's nice if they come as professionally as possible, but I will tell you this. There are kids who go to schools where they don't have money to buy suits, where the choice is, my mom could either put food on the table or buy me a suit that I'm going to use once a month. I always vote, get food on the table, right? I don't care what you're wearing. I care about what you're speaking, right? Similarly, if somebody comes in with blue hair or something that is not necessarily natural, while it might be distracting, it has nothing to do with their speech. Do not mention their looks, the number of earrings they're wearing, whether or not they're wearing makeup, whether or not they shaved that day. Guys, we are not Mr. Blackwell. This isn't the best dressed list. This is the best spoken list. It's also, since we're listening to their speeches, guys, we're listening both to how they speak and what they speak. So you can judge them on the criteria of, wow, that was a really well-written speech. But don't just stop there. Say it was a well-written speech because you used high-end vocabulary, because you used rhetorical strategies like allusion or allegory or metaphor, if you know those things, right? You could say to them, you're using colloquialisms like, Those are distractions. It's fair to say that. But what it's not fair to say is, why do you have a lisp? Why are you not in speech therapy? Why do you have an accent from another country? Friends, that's none of your business. The fact that they may have a speech impediment or a strong accent, I would give them credit for standing in front of a room and trying to get better. I don't think I would mention it unless it is so distracting. Because It combined with the pace that they're speaking with, I couldn't understand you. Maybe if you slowed down, maybe if you enunciated each word a little bit clearer. Guys, that's a very nice way of saying spit out your words because either I can't really understand your accent or I can't understand your speech impediment without drawing attention to something that they may feel bad about. I said before, if somebody walks in with blue hair, you don't put that on the ballot. Who cares? However, you absolutely could say to them, your hair is getting in your face. It's getting in your mouth. You have to spit hair out of your mouth while you're speaking. So you might want to consider tying your hair back or using clips. That's helpful to them. But saying, why is your hair blue? Not so helpful. I simply say to you, remember, your comments should be constructive. Your comments should be kind. Treat each child as if they were your child. Do not send them out of the room feeling bad about themselves, because believe me, a lot of them are going to beat themselves up, even over things that you didn't think were terribly important. And we want them to continue in this category. Let's see. You're rating the speech, and then you're rating, or I should say ranking. There's a difference. You're rating the speech and ranking the student. Here's where it gets confusing if you've never done Congress before. Rating the speech, 6 is the very best you can get. It's like Martin Luther King stepped in front of the room and mesmerized you with their rhetoric and their logic and their ability to hold the room. It was amazing. Couldn't get any better. 5, really very good. A couple of maybe minor things, but really strong performance. 4, good. There are things you need to work on that could make it even better, but you did the job. 3, you might want to think about adding more evidence, adding more analysis, slowing down a lot more. Overall, your speech was okay, but it could be better. In general, we never rank anybody. Oh, I'm sorry. You never rate a speech less than a 3. And here are the exceptions, guys. If they get up in front of the room and are deliberately disrespectful, they use curse words to make the audience laugh for shock value, and it has nothing to do with the speech. If they are moving around and doing cartwheels and sitting on the floor and doing anything to distract you from listening to the speech, or if they are totally unprepared, they don't know what this topic means, or they get it wrong. They thought it meant something and they give a whole speech on something else. Then maybe you'd give them less than a 3. But honestly, guys, when you are done with the round and Tabroom is going to average out the number, the ratings of the speeches that you give, or that they gave, you'll know if somebody has an average of 3 that they probably weren't best in the room. You don't need to make them 2. You don't need to make them 1. The 3 is what's going to drop them. So try again. Be constructive. Be kind. It's the kind thing to do, to say to somebody, you need work, but you did the job. That's a 3. Then, when everybody has completed all of their speeches, you're going to rank the speakers themselves. And you'll look at the average of the speeches that they gave. And maybe somebody gave 2 6s and somebody gave 2 3s. Well, the 2 6s is probably going to be in the top 3 of the room. And maybe the one that got the 2 3s, they're not going to get ranked. Which, by the way, if they're not ranked 1 through 8 in the room, everybody automatically then gets ranked 9th. Why? Because nobody wants to know that they were the worst. 9 means I don't advance, and that's all that it means. They have no idea if somebody else got ranked better or worse than them, right? And the idea is not to make them feel bad about the work that they did, because guess what? They got up on a Saturday morning. For the most part, they made themselves look as good as they could. They practiced a speech. They listened. They took notes. You don't want to dissuade them. So, in rating, 1 is the best speaker. 8 is the least best ranked speaker. So it's just the opposite of the rating of the speeches. Rating of the speeches, 6 is best. Ranking of the students, 1 is best. At the end of the round, you don't necessarily have to have all of your notes put in. So if you jotted down your notes in a pad, you can always go and put your notes in later. You have, I believe, 24 hours to do that. However, you have no more than 15 minutes to put your rankings in. If you take more than 15 minutes to figure out who was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, somebody from Tabroom is going to come up to your room and say, you're holding up the tournament. We need to know that information. So, as you're going along, maybe you're jotting down amongst your notes, wow, I'm looking here and these, I said 6, 6 for this person, 1, and put that in and keep your notes so that you can look over them and turn to them for your rankings. But the rankings must be in within 15 minutes of the end of the round. Do not confer with the other judge in the room. Your opinion is your opinion. You may think that the person who is the best in the room, they may think is the worst. And guess what? It's all subjective. And as the day goes on, it'll all kind of even itself out. You may have a preference for one kind of a speaking style while the other judge has a different preference. But don't confer. The only thing I could see conferring is if you say to them, because you're confused, 1 is the best ranking for a student, right? And 6 is the best ranking for a speech, right? Because you don't want to accidentally flip those. You can always add your comments later. The ballot will tell you how many to rank. So if it's more than 8, it'll say so. Rank that top number of students, and all others will automatically be ranked the same ranking as somebody in the room who needs to do a little bit more work. All right? Kate, did I leave anything out that you think we need to cover?
No, I think you covered everything. Just reiterating that if we see that someone has gotten a 1 for their speaker points, you will probably hear from someone in TAP being like, is someone going to report something? Did something go wrong? Do we need to talk to a coach? Something like that. You can also check with the other judge in the room if they're more experienced. Some of them are alums coming this Saturday, or reach out to Tab if you think something is like a rules violation or something like that kind of stuff you can ask about. obviously if both judges are starting out, then definitely ask Tab
Right.
to confirm rather than just saying like, oh, I don't think they're supposed to do that, so I'm gonna not rank them. Like just double check if you have any if you're even wavering a little bit.
And the
Um,
only other weird thing that I would like to address, I'm sure that you guys are all, very capable, but there may be a piece of legislation that's hot button. I don't know. It hasn't really happened that much, right? Gun control, abortion, something where you personally have a really strong opinion on. Leave your opinion in the hallway. Friends, it's not about whether or not you would vote for this legislation. It's about whether or not the person putting forth the legislation is making a convincing argument. That's all that it is. Because remember, guys, this is make believe. This isn't real Congress. They're not really voting on gun control, right? And you may have a very strong opinion. Forget it. Just listen to what they're saying, how they're saying it, how they question others, and how they respond to questions. Those are the four tasks that you are asked to do. So please leave your political beliefs in the hallway. Um, and
yeah, the kids might be speaking on the opposite side to what they might personally
Right.
believe.
Somebody might have
Sometimes
said
that's
to
like,
them, you know
yeah.
what? There's got to be a negative speech given, otherwise, there's no debate. So they may
Hmm.
have picked the short straw and been told by their coach, you're going to have to be the negative for this.
Hmm.
And you know what? It's almost more commendable if I ever find that out to say you gave an amazing speech on something you don't believe in. You're definitely going to be a lawyer or a politician. So that's kind of sort of Congress in a nutshell. My friends who are here as potential judges, are there any things that we talked about or even that maybe we didn't talk about that you would like us to cover? Like, what if, or how do you do this? I've scared you to silence. Or have you all actually, is it like when I was teaching during COVID where you just turned off the camera and every one of you left the room? Turn on your mic and say hello.
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry, I guess suppose I'd be interested. Are there any time signals that judges should give or
It's
No,
not,
so
that is
that's
totally up to the presiding officer. The presiding officer, when they are, I think it's at 2:30 to, I'm sorry,
it's
2:30,
2:30, 2:45, and then 2:55. They might have a gavel, they might have
right?
a water bottle that they're kind
Yeah.
of banging on the table. They
So
will be
you'll
doing
hear
that
them,
during the speech. They'll be
yeah, they'll
banging the
knock
gavel while
knock it
someone is
louder and
talking. That's
louder
normal. The
until
kids
they
should
just
not get
stop.
thrown by that.
Hmm.
thank you.
And that's
But that's
not
the
a
beauty of the
presiding
presiding
officer
officer
being
is that they're
rude,
doing it for you.
right? And
Yeah.
they're not being rude by doing that, guys. That's their job. Anyone else?
So
I feel like I should.
if there's no questions, I would like to take just a couple of minutes of your time to show you what all of the things Neil's been describing look like. So let me just take up a screen share. So first things first, we mentioned tabroom.com. I pasted the link to Tabroom in the chat. One thing that's very important, and Neil also mentioned this, it's a good idea to click on your email here, and at the bottom, on the right side of the screen, there's a place where you can put in standing conflicts. So it's a good idea to, if you're affiliated with a child who is competing, either for the school that's here, or sometimes parents have siblings that go to multiple schools, put names of people you might be conflicted in here. That will throw up a big red warning on our side if we accidentally schedule you to judge the person you have a conflict from. If you're, say, a recent alumni of some school and you think you can't judge that school fairly, feel free to put an entire school in here that will say this person shouldn't be judging anyone from that school. That information stays with your account throughout the year as you sign up for a future tournament, and it's very helpful for us to be able to slot people in to the right places and make sure that there aren't any conflicts of interest there. So again, if you click your email, you'll see a section on the right-hand side of the screen that says standing conflicts, where you can put all of this in. I'll share this link in the chat as well. This is a sample of what a online ballot will look like. Actually, this is a sample of 3 different online ballots. No one judge would ever have a speech round, a Congress round, and a public forum round in one tournament, but this will let you see what all the different debates look like. So we're focusing on this here, Congress. When a ballot is released to you, and they're usually released to you one at a time, right about 30 minutes before the beginning of each session, you'll see that you're judging Congress, that it's session 1. It'll tell you what room you're going to and the start time of the round. As soon as you see this appear in your Tabroom account, click this button. We have the ability to change what this button says. Sometimes it will say start, sometimes it will say acknowledge, sometimes it will say on my way. Regardless of what it says, this signals to us in the tournament office, I know I have this ballot and I am heading towards this room. On our side, we have a checklist next to each judge, and your name turns green as soon as you've clicked this button. We start panicking when we see the handful of judges whose names have not turned green yet. So please click this button as soon as you see this show up in your account. This is what a ballot will look like. Your chamber will have 12, 13, 14, 16, maybe even 20 students in there. They'll all be listed here. At the beginning, they'll have the presiding officer election, as we said, so you can come through here and select whoever was elected presiding officer, mark that they are the presiding officer, and then there's a place where you can give them feedback of how well they presided over this session, and you can do free text feedback here. You should also give points to the presiding officer. I think the rule is for our sessions, they're only an hour long. If you were judging at some invitational where the session might be multiple hours long, I believe the rule is you get points per hour of presiding. So you'd give, again, the same score, 6 being they were an excellent presiding officer, give points here and feedback. For most of the students, what you're going to be doing is commenting on speeches. So say Alana is our first speaker. They are speaking on.
So you have to click on the no, Alana is not presiding officer.
Actually, I think that's just a bug in my. I don't think that.
Oh,
I don't. I
it
think that's a bug
automatically
in my
does it?
sample ballot.
Mhm.
Yeah. So then you would say that Alana, speaking on, say, agriculture subsidies, is on the pro for that bill. Again, you can give some feedback. You can give some points, and click save. And when you click save, that will stay there so that when you move to the next person speaking, say Casper is speaking against that bill, also gave a good speech, you can click save. And these will all be preserved so that if you come back to Alana later and you want to update your comments on the agriculture speech, you can do that.
And do me a favor, Frank, could you just click to the other tab, the rankings tab? Now you will see there is in the average column, it tells you how many points each kid has gotten so far. So if they speak twice, and let's say Alana gave a 5 the first time, but a 6 the second, then it's going to say in the average 5.5. And if Casper gave 5 and 5 or 5 and 4, that average will change so that when you're getting ready to do your rankings, you will already see what you've given them. And obviously the people with the highest averages should theoretically be the ones that rank the highest in the room.
Absolutely. And I think Neil mentioned this, but just to be very clear, these comments, you can edit whenever you want up until the end of the tournament. It is important that you put these points in before you submit this ballot. You can't go back in and add these points later. So it's a good idea as students are speaking, always put it, as the student is finished speaking, click the points in and click save so that gets saved to their ballot. and you can come back and write your comments later. I would strongly, strongly recommend that you don't actually write your comments in this website. Have something like Notepad, Word, Google Docs, something more persistent to take your notes in and then copy paste them into here. What we have seen happen in some of the schools, especially if Wi-Fi is a little bit spotty, you go to click save, there's a little blip in the Wi-Fi, your comments disappear into the ether. We don't want that to happen to you. We want the students to get your feedback. So write your comments somewhere else, copy and paste in at the end. But as the debate is going on, as students are speaking, do try to fill in the points as you go. So you can continue going. Next person speaks, for, against. Eventually you'll get to someone who's making their second speech, as Neil said. Maybe this time Alana is on the negative side of the blah bill and gave a much better speech. And again, you'll still be able to come back here and edit feedback for both of those speeches. And now if you look at the rankings, you'll see, again, the average is updated and you'll see the points total. Once the session is over, this is where you will rank the students. You'll be able to see for reference all of the speeches that they gave. And you will rank them again, 1 being best, 2 being second best. Usually we'll ask you to rank the top 7 or the top 8. So it depends on the tournament. But if this says auto-filled with 9, it means you only need to rank 1 through 8. So say based on this, obviously Alana is our 1, Casper is our 2. The other people haven't spoken, but we'll just make up some. Oh, and Corey, I think, was our PO. So maybe Corey was our 4, 3, 6, 7, 5. Did I miss any numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We'll say Devin was our 8. Fill that in. You click submit. Okay. I will fix the sample ballot. I'll show you what this looks like on a different ballot just for illustration purposes. This is the speech ballot, but same idea. After you have your rankings in, ignore what I'm doing. It will ask you to confirm your ranks, and it will just show your information to you again with your ranks filled in. Generally, it'll sort by the order in which you rank them and double check that that is what you intended to do. If you look at this and say, ooh, no, I think I made a mistake, you can hit the red button, go back in and edit any of your points and rankings. If it's correct, you can hit the green button and that will be completing your obligation for that round. So I went through that all rather quickly. Any questions about the technology side of things? So I pasted this link into the chat as well. Feel free to click around here. This is totally a browser-based tool. Nothing you type into this site, this black and white version of Tabroom, goes anywhere. So it's just there for you as a reference to experience what the website will look like. All right. If there are no other questions, I want to echo what Neil and Kate already said. We can't do this activity without you volunteer judges. So thank you very much for giving us your evening tonight to learn about this event and some of your time on Saturday to make these tournaments possible.
Thank you.